what the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
You're not ruling out reopening 21 and amending it and beefing it up, making it tougher? Is that what you're saying?
Phil, as we said in French, we're not going to start commenting on specific scenarios, okay? The Premier says we must take the time to examine all of the options. Mm-hmm. This is what we're going to do. Do not ask us to identify specifics, to include or exclude specific scenarios. This isn't the time for that.
Really? Okay. That's Phil Autier, the Gazette, asking the question, of course, of Bernard Drinville, the education minister, on what the government plans to do about the situation at Bedford School beyond just the suspension of 11 teachers there over this toxic work environment. James Mennie is on the line over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, I'm trying to understand where this could go, right? This is the original argument of Bill 21 where it's not what's on your head, it's what's in your head. That being the case, what could the government possibly do to deal with a situation like this other than to deal with each case individually?
Well, I respectfully submit, first of all, the reason Bernard Drinville was so sensitive in his answer to my colleague Phil Autier at the Gazette is because he knows full well this has got far more to do with the administration of that particular school than it does with Bill 21. In fact, even yesterday, when Parti Québécois leader Paul Plamondon was making, as far as I'm concerned, the rather outrageous claim that there aren't enough Quebec-born kids in Quebec schools. But I don't have any solutions to propose, he says, but the government should do something about it. Bill 21 was never anything more than a cocktail napkin law aimed at keeping the cracker base out in the regions happy. It forbids observant Jews and Muslims from wearing headgear. It forbids ostentatious signs of religious affiliation. It doesn't address this. And in fact, when I look at this story out of Bedford, the first question I want to ask is, tell me, is Bedford school, does it actually have a principal? Because generally, school directors are supposed to be in charge, not a clique. There shouldn't be some power play going on between groups of teachers. I don't know if the local mosque was involved in determining curriculum or regulations within that school. But my understanding is that the reason the CAC blew up school boards was to make sure that we had a good centralized bureaucracy where absolutely ridiculous situations like this were not allowed to occur. Apparently that was wrong. So the school board reform, which was just to save money on elections, that's the bottom line, and now Bill 21 proved once again that this is a government about frosting and no cake. That said, there is a problem at Bedford. They should get to the bottom of it. But in the meantime, whether you're with the Parti Québécois or whether you're with the Coalition Avenir Québec, take a leaf from the book of Bernard Drinville, for the time being at least, and keep your damn mouth shut until you know what you're talking about. We don't know exactly what happened there. We don't know exactly how big a role religion played in any of this, as opposed to, say, cultural leanings. Or indeed, I'll be straight up with you, Aaron. When this story first broke, and I heard how these kids were being treated, these kids in elementary school were being treated by the teachers, I thought, you know what? And they say, well, they're from the Maghreb, right? They're from North Africa. And I didn't think of the Maghreb. I didn't think of Islam. I thought about the French school system, how back in my day, and when I mean French from France, as we say in these parts. And back in my day, we had a few of those in my system, in the English system. And I got to tell you, Aaron, when it came to being a bunch of chalk-hurling psychos, we had more than a few who came out of the old system française, in the old hexagon. So I thought first, well, that's just a professional view, of perhaps an unnecessarily, hard-edged view of how you do your job. But now I'm seeing this thing being nudged by the likes of François Legault, and frankly by the likes of Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, down to, towards another existential identity crisis, which is falling very, very well for the CAC, which is in need of all the help that it can get and try and move its numbers up. Is it going to work? I'm not sure. Do 11 teachers in one school constitute a threat to the Nation Québécoise? And in fact, let's also wait and hear what the investigations into these other schools, I don't know how many others there are, But let's find out how many other schools are involved and the extent of this. Right now, I think there are a few politicians up in Quebec City who are playing a very dangerous game, and they're kind of rolling the dice based on what they know and what they think people know. If this turns around and becomes something other than it's being painted to be right now, there's going to be hell to pay, because there's enough problems right now in the Quebec's education system, which is hardly a model for anything, okay, for it to be further, to have the waters further muddied by perhaps some opportunistic politicians who are trying to score cheap political points on a situation which may or may not exist.
You know, beyond, and you're right about PSPP, and I know we talked about yesterday this idea, you know, that he actually said that out loud. There are not enough Quebec students in our schools. But when you look at this situation, Jim, and let's not move too far beyond this, this is one school. Yes, there's the possibility others will be involved. But for Bernard Drinville to come out this early, right, before we even know all the facts, other than 11 teachers are now suspended with pay, and suggest that the woman responsible for this group, because remember, they don't have a board, right? These are service centers now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that woman, no, she doesn't need to be dismissed or anything else because apparently it's under control. I don't know how you square that circle. Someone knew this was going on, right? We know parents had complained about this. Other teachers had complained about it. How could it have gotten to this point and not have someone know?
And indeed, how could it have gotten to this point under the aegis, at least the apparent aegis, of Bill 21? I thought stuff like this, although frankly, and I've been looking high and low in the hours before I came on to talk to you, Aaron, I'm looking high and low for something other than articles that you know, deal with headgear in Bill 21. I mean, the fact is, I think there are enough regulations and there's enough common sense out there to determine if these teachers were doing some of the things they were alleged to have done. Yeah, there's grounds for suspending them. Yes, there's grounds for suspending their teaching licenses until we find out what's going on. And once again, you're quite right. I think from the administrative angle, where was the principal? Where was the director of the school service center? Do they not even know what's going on under their noses? Is it because there was perhaps the teachers involved knew there were so many membranes of bureaucracy between them and the people they theoretically answer to that they figured they could get away with it? I don't know. It seems to me, though, yeah, it's a problem. I don't think it's a religious problem. I think this is a typical Quebec bureaucracy, left hand, right hand, bunch of people in the middle getting away with whatever they want to do situation. And it's not going to be made easier to solve by the way certain politicians are treating it right now.
So if I can ask you, Jim, if you had to take a guess here, you heard Legault speak about this today, very angry apparently, and promising, you know, kind of pointing that finger that things will be done. What gets done here exactly? I mean, what can you do? Rewrite, change the whole law? I know he said he wanted to renew the notwithstanding clause. Beyond that, what could you actually see happening here?
Well, you know, given the way the Premier of Quebec, God help us, is talking, how many of these people were wearing hijabs? How many of these people were, I mean, he seems to really be focusing on some religious angle here, which, as far as I can tell, based on the information that we know about, seems to have played a kind of an ephemeral role in all of this. We seem to have had some teachers with some real attitude problems in terms of teaching, in terms of how they treat their students, in terms of how they execute their mandates to educate the kids. Yeah, that's a real problem there. All of a sudden, if François Legault keeps pointing at any mosque in Quebec as being perhaps a source of this problem, I got news for you. And I've said it before, and this time I think it's even worse. I think he's really playing with fire, and I think if he doesn't smarten up sooner rather than later, we're going to go back to situations where people are going to start, saying, well, gee, what are all these immigrants doing here? Look what's happening. They're ripping up the fabric of Quebec society. Yeah. He's ratcheting it up again. And I'm very sorry that from what I've seen in all of the reports on the examination of that school, of the conduct of those teachers, I am not seeing a situation that matches the reaction we're getting from François Legault right now.
All right, let me move on and talk about another story today, which is going to be my question when we come back here. You know what happened this morning? 2 protesters deciding to climb the Jacques Cartier Bridge. I don't know if you heard either one of them on the air this morning. Andrew had one of them on. And this is all about something, and again, this is not new. It's just the latest iteration of this, right? So it's about Canada's policy on drilling for oil, and we got to get out, and it's bad for the environment. And the way to make this, I guess, this position hurt even more was to tie up traffic. I'm curious what you think of that.
Okay, well, first of all, the immediate effect was to worsen Montreal's air quality with the traffic jams that were created by shutting down that bridge. Okay, so everyone was stuck in traffic, all those idling cars. There's a little more greenhouse gas for you. I don't know what you do. I mean, how do you make it impossible for people to climb up there? These guys knew what they were doing. They are accomplished climbers. They'll be unless you, I guess, make it ridiculously high fines or whatever. I don't know how to stop it because it's been going on. This is not the first time that Jacques Cartier has been the target of demonstrators, and not just for environmental causes. All that said, I know the bridge itself was modified in years past to make it difficult for people because people were using it as a suicide platform, and they put up special fences and whatever. Can you fix this bridge to make it impossible for unauthorized persons to climb up the girders? Probably not. But once again, I think the only alternative, if you were stuck in that traffic jam today, is if you make it not worth the while of the demonstrator to climb up there in the first place, you might be onto something. But apart from that, I'm very sorry. I'd like to give you a nice pat answer, but I can't. It's going to go on for the foreseeable future.
James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
The man.